for Eddie Melton. In East Chicago, Mayor Anthony Copeland has a charge from North Township trustee Adrian Santos. Bill Carroll, Lake Station's mayor, is getting primaried by former city councilman Neil Anderson. And it's going to be interesting to be watching those races this evening. And, of course, what's old is new again, as John Costas is rerunning for his old seat as Valparaiso mayor because current mayor Matt Murphy, who replaced Costas 4 years ago, is stepping down. Are you following me there? Kind of confusing, right? And in Michigan City, Ron Meir is running for the Democratic primary in a possible rematch against now current Mayor Dwayne Perry, who's unopposed in the GOP primary this fall. And of course, there is the winner-take-all. In Hammond, Hobart, and Whiting, the Democratic primary races will decide the next mayor, as there are no Republican candidates in any of those primary races. And what kind of an impact will the South Shore double-track extension have in places like Gary, Portage, and Michigan City? And of course, school referendums, some of them including Lowell, where there was nothing else on the ballot other than a school referendum, but that also includes Highland and Munster. And a no vote doesn't mean a no vote. Non-competitive races in cities means there's no voting, and that includes for some Democratic voters in Crown Point. I myself had no ballot to fill out in unincorporated Lake County. So what kind of an impact does that have on voter turnout year over year, as off-year primaries often have some of the lowest turnout of all election cycles? And finally, does age matter? Austin Bonta and Hannah Trueblood are running for mayoral races. Bonta in Portage and Trueblood in Valparaiso. They would be record-setting age-wise should they win in the fall. But Northwest Indiana doesn't seem to vote in many young mayoral candidates. So a lot of interesting topics, I think, that that have come up for me in terms of researching in the last couple of days and weeks as we have been leading into this evening. Michael, Jim, are there topics, are there ideas, are there races, are there candidates maybe, or storylines within those races that you've been paying attention to that you think might be worthwhile and something to pay attention to as the evening wears on?
Absolutely, Tom. I wanted to note you were talking about how some of these storylines can be a little bit confusing to follow. In Valparaiso, not only is Mayor Murphy not running for mayor again, he's now running for city council at large. So if only to keep that a little bit more interesting.
I think for me, I think the Gary and the East Chicago races are most interesting, only because, you still have the urban corridors and their proximity to Chicago, and just what does this all mean in terms of you still have a lot of population up there and their future. So you have Anthony Copeland, who's really the longtime mayor of East Chicago. I remember Anthony Copeland when
he moderated, Michael, his first debate when he won for the first time. We were at the East Chicago, like an Elks Moose Lodge day or something, Union Hall, I think. You moderated that debate in partnership with the League of Women Voters during his first campaign. So not to make you feel old or date you.
Oh, no, I was going to go even further back. He was a public television, public access TV host back in the day, back in the 90s, I want to say. With him and Gilda Orange, they used to kind of, razz some of the officials in East Chicago, including Mayor Pastrick. And lo and behold, he's probably not nearing yet the number of years Pastrick was in office, but he's climbing in there. So it's going to be a really tough race to get him to, if there's an upset with Adrian Santos. Adrian Santos, could end up becoming the second Puerto Rican mayor in East Chicago history. He's been a long-time public official, nice guy. I know there's been a lot of talk about racial politics in East Chicago. I don't know. I just don't buy it. That city just by default, there's going to be some racial lines. But in East Chicago, it's always been kind of a us versus them mentality. Mm-hmm. People cross lines all the time. I think it's just going to be who get their message out. Now in Gary, Jerome Prince, he's done an admirable job for the last 4 years. But Eddie Melton still kind of this rising star. Here's the thing, though. What if Eddie loses? what does this mean for his political future? I'm not saying he's going to lose. I have no crystal ball in this. We're going to see what the numbers bear out. But Gary, let's face it, it's teetering, and what's next for it? It needs some sizable economic development. Maybe the double tracking program is going to help. Public transportation. They've got some new development near downtown Gary, some apartments. So I know for the outside visitor, you come into Gary and say, well, man, what happened here? But folks who are there a lot, there are pockets of improvement. And I just got to think, at some point we got to see the city turn around and start to prosper.
Yeah, I was going to say it'd be an interesting loss for Melton, who allegedly, maybe, possibly thought about running statewide for governor 4 years ago,
Right.
3 years ago at this point, and decided to take his toe out of the pool, so to speak. He had been touring the state, some of you might remember, with Jennifer McCormick, who was the former Secretary of Education for the state, back when it was a voted on position as opposed to now a government appointed position. And one other comment as well about that City of East Chicago race. You've got Mayor Anthony Copeland running against North Township trustee Adrian Santos. Now, if Adrian Santos wins in the fall, he could be running up against Arthur Santos. Mike Brown, meet Mike Brown, this time in East Chicago. Feels very Northwest Indiana politicky in that regard. Jim.
Problem for Arthur is probably the R next to his name in that fall race, but we'll see how that shakes out if that's the case. I absolutely agree with Michael. Those are two important races. I think that the marquee race of the night is the Gary mayor's race. One of the biggest, second biggest city community in Northwest Indiana. You have Jerome Prince, who obviously has a strong record over the last 4 years. But you have Eddie Melton, who I think really, if you look at politicians and political leaders across the state, is probably an individual who gets people more excited than a lot of other politicians, and can rally people more than a lot of other people, and has shown a lot of leadership down in Indianapolis. So I'm keeping a close eye on that one. In Porter County, you alluded to, or you talked about the mayor's race in Valpo. John Costas is running again. My suspicion is that he's going to win that primary, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see, if it's close at all or not. And I think that that's going to really foretell a lot, whether the Republican primary voters in Valpo want the former mayor to come back, or whether they would like to have a different voice in the future. So those are a couple races that I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, Costas, former mayor for 16 years in Valparaiso, so he would be no stranger to the mayor's seat there. We got to take a quick break, and we'll be back with the most updated and latest numbers with Michael Gallenberger. You're listening to live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM. Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000-plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today.
As your Northwest Indiana public broadcasting station, Lakeshore Public Media's goal is to serve you with a radio broadcast that engages, excites, and inspires. Help your local station reach that goal better by sharing your thoughts. Whether you tune in occasionally or have made us a part of your daily routine, your opinions matter. Visit lakeshorepublicradio.org/feedback to help us build a stronger community station.
It's coming up on 7:17. You're listening to election coverage from Lakeshore Public Media. And the results from Lake County so far. Public question Highland Schools, 581 yes, 571 no. Public question Munster Schools, 1,184 yes, 575 no. Public question Tri Creek Schools, 570 yes, 925 no. Democratic ballot for Mayor of East Chicago. Anthony Copeland, 1,289. Adrian Santos, 822. Democratic ballot for Mayor City of Gary. Jerome A. Prince, 1,228. Eddie Melton, 1,908. Mayor City of Hobart Democratic ballot. Josh Huddleston, 500. Jerry Allen Herzog, 103. Democratic ballot for Mayor of Lake Station. Bill Carroll, 96. Neil Anderson, 65. Turning to the Republican ballot for Mayor of East Chicago. Travis Adonis Francis, 20. Arthur Santos Sr., 24. Turning now to LaPorte County in the Democratic primary for Mayor of Michigan City. Angie Nelson Deitch, 1,141. Michael Mack, 61. Ron Meir, 314. Johnny Stimley, 303. Mark S. Yagelski, 300. And again, those are the early and absentee ballots and a few of the early returns from Election Day from Lake and Porter counties. For Lakeshore News, I'm Michael Gallenberger.
He turned us on to so many great bands.
Angel City, April Wine, Scorps, AC/DC, Point Blank, Kansas, Rush.
Now he's bringing them back, scratchy vital and all.
Welcome to Don's Basement.
Hi, it's Don Clark. Join me each week down here in the basement as we uncork some vintage rock that has not seen the light of day in a long, long time.
Don's Basement tapes, Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. on 89.1 WLPR, Lakeshore Public Radio, and lakeshorepublicradio.org.
People who are desperate to cross into the U.S. from Mexico often take unfamiliar and sometimes deadly routes.
And they don't have the preparation that you would expect, that have no idea where they are, and that have been walking for days without a sip of water.
Volunteers are mapping trails and leaving essential supplies for people who follow them. On the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
Tune in for Morning Edition starting at 4 a.m. with local news at 6 a.m. here on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM. Welcome back to live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM. I'm Tom Maloney in studio with Michael Puente and Jim Harper. You just got the latest numbers from Michael Gallenberger. Dee Dotson is our producer for the evening. Jose Rodriguez is our engineer, and manning the boards as well on social media are the production crew from upstairs who have come downstairs to eat our election night pizza. We hope that you are enjoying your election night pizza across Northwest Indiana. And
anchoring this show is Mr. El Guapo himself, Tom Maloney.
Oh, I forgot about that name. That is correct. Some early numbers coming in here. I guess some things not necessarily a surprise. Some a bit of a shocker here. We'll be talking with some education coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, but already seeing a big turnout for Lowell voting no on the school referendum. And keep in mind, the numbers aren't finalized yet, and they realistically won't be finalized and called this evening either. Jim, we'll let you explain that here in just a minute. But in Lowell, that is the only thing on the ballot. There is no mayoral's race. There is no city council race. There is no other race. So 900 people showed up in Lowell to vote no on that school referendum. And so the annual property tax rate of 20.5 cents per $100 of assessed value for 8 years with an annual revenue of about $3.6 million. The school tax rate for Tri Creeks currently sitting at just north of $1 per $100 of assessed value. It'll drop, though, to 93 cents in 2024. School referendums the last couple of years, guys, have passed easily in Northwest Indiana for the most part. There have been, I think, if you put two of them on a ballot, a lot of folks don't feel comfortable voting yes for two, but they'll give you one of them. But here we're seeing people showing up. It's a tight race right now. In Highland, I think there's a 10-vote difference, and in Munster, it looks like it's going to pass easily, but in Lowell, not quite the case. Let's talk school referendums when they get thrown on to these off-year primary cycles, and a letter to the editor from Dan Blankenship. He wrote into the Lowell Tribune basically telling people to vote no, accusing the school board of putting it on the off-year primary simply because he was convinced and wanted people to understand that they were trying to just sweep this under the rug and maybe just get a couple of people out there to vote for it. Is there a method to the madness when it comes to school referendums in terms of voting and in terms of voter turnout, especially when it's the only thing on the ballot?
Excuse me, Tom. I think that a lot of people think that there is a method to the madness. My sense is that it's hard to sweep a property tax increase under the rug. People start to pay attention.
They do.
Real fast. And certainly in my community, in Valparaiso, we had a referendum on the ballot. I think it was last year, and there was plenty of talk about that. It was hard to ignore. So perhaps some people try and do that, but my belief is that voters pay attention to these things because it hits them right in their wallets, and because it deals with an issue that for most people is one of the most important issues that our government has, and that is ensuring a quality public education for our kids. Mm-hmm. They often are very intensely local. I think that's why tonight in Lake County you're seeing one that's ahead by quite a bit, one that's behind by quite a bit, and one that's too close to call at this early stage with the early votes in. So I think it's hard to draw trends just from these early results.
I think for proponents of referendums, it's so hard, just what Jim was saying, to promote raising your property taxes, especially let's face it, Lola is probably a more Republican area of Lake mm-hmm. County.
Yep.
And, raising taxes isn't good. But when you're talking about education, when you're talking about educating your kids, is there a price limit? Can you put a tag on that? I don't live in that district, so it's hard to say, but you've got your message for the proponents has to be crystal clear. And if it's government saying, hey, we need this money, you pass it, maybe it falls on deaf ears.
Tom, I think that the different results here are a real sign of the underlying problem, in my opinion, of the way that Indiana funds public schools. Our state has a formula from Indianapolis that the legislators have developed that determines how much money local school districts get. But far too often what local administrators, local teachers, and local parents know is that that's just not enough money to adequately provide the services that are necessary to give our kids the best education in the world. And unfortunately, we get left with a system where some communities, Munster, a wealthier community, can afford to increase its taxes to fund its schools. And some communities, you have people who are already on the brink with their property tax bill and
right.
simply can't afford to vote in favor of a higher bill to make sure that we have adequate public education. So to me, this all comes back to a failure from Indianapolis and the need to change the way that our schools are funded in Indiana.
Yeah, in Lowell, the district receives a basic grant component, according to the Lowell Tribune, of about $6,600 per student from the state. It can get adjusted based on the poverty rate in the community. But once you factor in for Lowell, special education, vocational programs, ESL classes, the figure rises to just over $7,500 per student. So still about $1,000 off in terms of where do you make up that lost ground when it comes to needing those other amenities. And at the same time, when you move and when you're looking for a house, right, people are looking at the school districts. They want an A-plus school district. They want someplace where the kid's going to get a good education to be able to go on to a trade or vocational school or go on to college mortgage afterwards, really without any hiccups. And it's a selling point for homes and houses. And of course, one of those issues, of course, is when those referendums don't pass and teachers are either let go or not hired on, and class sizes increase and test scores drop, right? It's sort of the first domino in the fall in terms of what can happen. And then your property value goes down as a result. But if you want to pay less taxes, it's probably a good thing. On the flip side of that, though, in Michigan City, Dwayne Perry has come out and said, one of the goals here for his administration is to build a subdivision for the first time in 36 years in Michigan City, with homes priced in the $250,000 to $300,000 range, which Michigan City doesn't have a lot of. But what does that do? It drives up the property value, and now all of a sudden Michigan City schools can start to get more money. And of course, like we talked about, the double track extension, and I think we're going to start to see some of that playing out. And what does that mean? Because at the billboard at the very top, I said all politics are local, and nothing is more local than when it comes to school referendums and when it comes to mayoral and city council races here across Northwest Indiana. Michael, I cut you off earlier. Sorry.
No, I was saying, according to some articles I've read in the Times, Lowell has the 11th lowest school property taxes in Lake County, and I think they were looking to raise about $1 million to help pay for. They're going to, without this referendum, they were going to be cutting up about $1 million from their budget in 2024, 2025.
Yeah, when it drops down to 93 cents. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So, yes, you want low property taxes. It drives newcomers there, homeowners. But you want quality education too, and that doesn't come free. And we've been talking about teacher pay all around the state. Indiana doesn't pay well when it comes to teachers, and they get. This is a competitive. This is a competitive field. You can vote with your feet. You can easily now. I know people will say, "Oh, well, what are you going to go to Illinois and pay those high property taxes?" Well, if it means a higher income and higher quality of living. I'm not telling Lowell people what to do, and obviously they already voted, and if it gets defeated, but it just seems like a little short-sighted to always go against the side of education. Especially when it comes to teachers.
I know we're talking about municipal elections today, Tom, and municipal issues, but it does remind me, the legislature just wrapped up the legislative session last week, and, there were the Republican legislative leadership had the opportunity to decide what its priorities were going to be. Mm-hmm. And if their priorities had been to put schools in a position that they didn't have to advance these referendums or didn't have to rely so strongly on these referendums, they could have done that. And, in my opinion, as a Democrat, I think that that's unfortunate. But I hope that when voters are thinking about and when people around Northwest Indiana are thinking about these referendums, we're not losing sight of the fact that the reason that these referendums are necessary is because of policy decisions that are being made in Indianapolis.
Right. And, of course, we just saw almost a record number in terms of dollars going towards education, but a lot of that also going towards charter schools and money outside of public education. So I think something probably to look at further down the road in terms of what education means for the state of Indiana as we move forward. We do, though, have to hit a break as we've got to be able to pay the bills. This is Lakeshore Public Media's primary election night here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, as well as on Facebook, where you can drop a comment and let us know what races you're looking out for. This is primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media. Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000-plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today.
Lakeshore Public Media's brand new radio antenna has been installed. and we could use your help to learn how the signal is performing in your neck of the woods. Please take a moment and visit lakeshorepublicradio.org/feedback to let us know.
It's 7:32. You're listening to primary election coverage from Lakeshore Public Media. Update on the mayor of Michigan City race. The numbers are final and unofficial, though, from LaPorte County. The final numbers for the Democratic primary for Michigan City Mayor: Angie Nelson Deutsch, 1,434. Michael Mack, 70. Ron Meir, 406. Johnny Stimley, 404. Mark S. Yagelski, 482. That's Angie Nelson Deutsch, the presumptive Democratic Party nominee for mayor of Michigan City. For Lakeshore News, I'm Michael Gallenberger.
People who are desperate to cross into the U.S. from Mexico often take unfamiliar and sometimes deadly routes.
And they don't have the preparation that you would expect, that have no idea where they are, and that have been walking for days without a sip of water.
Volunteers are mapping trails and leaving essential supplies for people who follow them. On the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
Tune in for Morning Edition starting at 4 a.m. with local news at 6 a.m. here on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM.
He turned us on to so many great bands.
Angel City, April Wine, Scorps, AC/DC, Point Blank, Kansas, Rush.
Now he's bringing them back, scratchy, vital, and all.
Welcome to Don's Basement.
Hi, it's Don Clark. Join me each week down here in the basement as we uncork some vintage rock that has not seen the light of day in a long, long time.
Don's Basement tapes, Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. on 89.1 WLPR, Lakeshore Public Radio, and lakeshorepublicradio.org.
This is live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM. I'm Tom Maloney in studio with Michael Puente and Jim Harper. And, of course, the breaking news that we just got from Michael Gallenberger is the numbers are in for LaPorte County, and maybe a surprising win, but maybe not. Angie Nelson Deutsch comes away victorious, and we're trying to reach out to her again. These are unofficial numbers, but we've got, at least according to Michael's report, the finalized numbers from LaPorte, but again, unofficial. So really quick, Jim, they're finalized, but they're unofficial. Is that like when the teacher grades the test but hasn't put it into the grade book yet? Is that what that means?
And perhaps you can go back and complain about your grade and say that lodge a complaint. Yeah, so I think tonight we have a pretty good idea. If the final results are clear-cut, I think we have a pretty good idea of who's going to win once the results are officially certified. But there is a process that has to go into place, or that has to take place, before that can happen and the county officially certifies the results. And I don't know the exact timeline, but I think it's a couple weeks from now. Another important thing to note is, at least the way that Lake County, and I think LaPorte, but that's all done at this point, but that Lake County reports is that Lake County initially reports a big batch of early votes, both the mail-in and the early in-person voting, and so that's what we've seen thus far. I haven't refreshed recently to see if we've gotten some day-of votes, but sometimes there are some different trends. Different types of people prefer to vote early, different types of people prefer to vote on Election Day, so you do sometimes see a little bit of a difference between those two results.
Yeah, I'm always an Election Day voter. I like it. It's just something about the day of. Granted, this year, ironically enough, even after moving, I don't get that opportunity. But it feels a little bit like a special occasion for me. It feels like a holiday to be able to go in and vote on the day of instead of, I guess I'll just go vote on a random Saturday. But to that degree, or to that point, a topic that came up during the Portage GOP primary debate, John Cannon brought up a candidate, former Portage mayor who Sue Lynch defeated last election cycle. Cannon is now running against Austin Bonta, but Cannon had brought up, he supports a 14-day early voting window. And so I wonder, what does that do, again, for turnout, not only during primary election day, but primary local off-year election day, and elections moving forward, that if you don't have that ease of access to be able to go early vote or vote from home, as now you've got to have your driver's license or state-issued ID number to go along with your mail-in ballot to, inform, the state that you are who you are. Just, I don't know. It seems like it might become harder and harder for some residents to be able to vote in the future here.
Yeah, we should not be making it harder for voters to vote. I mean, we should be encouraging it. And if that means, we grew up, we're traditionalists. I like to see a very busy election day. It's exciting for us reporters and stuff. But you know what? If that goes away in replaced by higher voter turnout, we just got to get people engaged. In so many of these races, heck, we see in Chicago in the mayor's race, only like a third of the people vote.
Yeah.
Why is that? I mean, you're talking about, things that are very serious, whether it's in Portage, Chicago, New York, East Chicago, Gary. These are local issues for you. These are pocketbook issues for you. And not only that, I think the ultimate watchdog now, if it's not just the newspapers, it's the voters. It's the voters. You're the ultimate watchdog on that. And if Portage residents came back and say, no, why are you going to make it harder on us to vote with this 14-day window? Make it easier. He wouldn't even be bringing it up. But I think it's part of that whole Republican, GOP, early voting is a bad thing, and the whole mantra where there's really absolutely no basis for that.
I was going to say, wasn't Porter County... they had delayed early voting. Everybody else started in April 14th, give or take. Was that right, or something like that?
I believe that everybody else. I don't know. I'm a Porter County voter. There were 2 weeks of early voting.
Yeah.
I think that the other counties in the region, or at least Lake County, had the standard 4 weeks of early voting, which is what Indiana typically employs.
Yeah, but then about April 2nd, then in Porter County was about April 12th or 14th, whatever
exactly.
that was.
It was 2 weeks ago Monday, whatever that was. As an early voter myself, I take a different perspective from you guys. I just love voting so much that I can't wait. I can't wait until Election Day, But Michael is absolutely right. There are a lot of reasons that people don't turn out, and just making it, easier for voters to cast their ballots is not a silver bullet, but it certainly is an important part of the equation for making sure that people can participate in this most important process. And unfortunately, what we've seen in Indiana, again, from Indianapolis and our state legislators, is a consistent ratcheting back of opportunities for people to vote, unfortunately. Early voting's great. I'm glad that we have that, opportunity in the state. But making it harder for people to cast mail ballots simply because of completely unproven allegations of fraud that, have been levied at the national level by MAGA Republicans is not good public policy. It's not good for voter participation and the strength of our democracy in this state. So my hope is that certainly, if people try and if people in Indianapolis or other state legislatures are going to try and put up hurdles, I hope that that makes voters, and I think sometimes it makes voters work even harder to make sure that they're going to get to the polls. But they shouldn't have to. People who have to work on Election Day, who commute to Chicago and, are out the door at 6 and aren't back, back in Indiana until 7, or whatever their schedule might be, they need to have opportunities to vote as well, and we should make sure that we're prioritizing.
Truth be told, I'm not kidding here. I voted in the last 15 minutes in my precinct in Maryville only because I was working all day, and sometimes I work from home, and magic of radio, stuff gets on the air in Chicago, but if it wasn't for an update by Eddie Melton on his Facebook page, and he got the last hour to vote, I wouldn't have voted today. I would have, oh my God, I forgot all about it. It's primary, so I ran out there.
What would you have said in here tonight?
Oh my God, I would have been, you know what?
He would have not showed up, yeah.
I would feel super bad. Well, I like the movie Superbad, but I would feel super bad in a bad way of not voting. I vote in every election. I know there's some journalists who say I don't vote, blah blah blah. I vote. That will never be taken away from me. I think it's one of the most important things you can do. In fact, and this is probably a bad time to bring it up. In a lot of schools, there's so much controversy, but I think schools play a pivotal role in making voting important to students. They could start, even if they can't vote in this election, they should be having their mock elections. They should be extra credit for learning the candidates, for understanding the candidate. What are the issues, and voting in your school district? Just letting them do it. I mean, I try to instill to my kids voting is important, and I shame them if they don't. So, I think we need to make it easier for people to vote and stop with this demagoguing of elections are bad and early voting, and it's all, come on, we all know that's hogwash.
We are going to take a quick 15-second break. We got to get to the underwriter, who I should note, Michael Puente is a professor at IUN, so full disclosure.
Where's my pipe?
I am a former adjunct professor at IUN. That is not the reason IUN is supporting us this evening, but we've got to hit that. We actually have the presumptive Democratic nominee from Michigan City on the line with us. We'll be talking with her in just a moment as those numbers have come down. But let's go ahead and take the quick break, and we'll get on the line as quickly as we can. Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000-plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today. This is live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, streaming on Facebook Live as well. Good evening. I'm Tom Maloney in studio with Michael Puente and Jim Harper. And joining us now on the studio line, Angie Nelson Deutsch. Angie, did I get your last name correct?
It's Deitch.
Deitch, Angie Deitch, Angie Nelson Deitch, the presumptive Democratic candidate winner for the Michigan City mayoral's race. Angie, congratulations.
Thank you. We just got the final numbers a few minutes ago, so we are excited.
A pretty big surprise. You were facing off against, let me see here if I can count properly, 5 other Democratic candidates for Michigan City mayor, including the former mayor, Ron Meir. What does it mean for you and your campaign to be able to pull this off?
Well, we've been working at this for a long time. I've been a very vocal member of the community, doing a lot of work here, supporting our youth and other organizations. And our team, we've been together for over a year and a half, and we worked our plan, and the results were what I expected. So I am so just excited and happy that everything worked out the way it did.
And let's go ahead and talk about that. Why did you decide to go ahead and run for mayor of Michigan City? What was that conversation like for you and your family and ultimately members of your campaign?
Yeah, well, we decided back in 2021, I decided to make the big jump and leave corporate America and focus on my consulting business. And my husband said, if you're going to run for mayor, you need to be all in. And that's what we did. And I just believe that sometimes in small towns, people happen to you and we're not intentional about leadership. And, I always talk about, I was talking to former Mayor Sheila, and we talked about leadership being a muscle that you have to, you have to work on it. And a lot of times because of voter turnout and too many candidates being in the race, you end up with someone that's not very intentional, and you happen upon a candidate. And I wanted to be very intentional about my leadership style and my capabilities. And so we've been at this now. We announced early before everybody, but we organized in 2021. So this is the result of our hard work and all of our volunteers. And I can ask for a better group of people. When we started with our small group in September 2021, I had a plan and strategy, and we pushed through it, and we didn't stray from it.
Angie, what is the plan for the fall then? What are some of the big topics, the big issues going on in Michigan City right now that drove voters out to the polls for you?
Well, we basically have right now. I plan on doing more listening sessions. There's a lot going on in Michigan City around economic development, but environmental things. But we also have a workforce issue that we need to really work to strengthen our people that are here now as these big projects come here. So, of course, housing is an issue, but we also have the NIPSCO plant that's going to be closing in a couple of years. So, I mean, we have so many fronts that are occurring. So our goal is to expand our team to be able to tackle all those issues. And that's what I want people to understand. It wasn't just my strategy. This was our plan from the entire team. And my goal is to embrace as many people who want to be a part of this vision.
Angie Nelson-Deutsch, who's the presumptive Democratic nominee, coming away with almost 54% of the vote, leading all vote getters this evening from both Democrats and Republicans, including defeating former Michigan City Mayor Ron Meer. Angie, thank you so much for joining us here on our primary election night coverage. Again, congratulations on your presumptive victory this evening, and we no doubt will be talking to you over the next couple of weeks and months as we lead up to general election day come November.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. So there we go. We've got one race called already. Of course, she'll be facing off against current Michigan City Mayor Dwayne Perry, the Republican, who defeated Ron Meer, as we all remember, 4 years ago. Ron Meer getting a little bit of hot water with the FBI with regards actually to his stepson, who had been arrested for a drug trafficking charge, and Meer ultimately saying that his stepson Adam Bray had been set up, and he was informed by an informant of this. The informant story turns out to be false. The charges are finally dropped against Meer in 2022, but still a lot of cloudiness around him, and he ran a failed state Senate campaign as well, Jim, so maybe the end of the line for Ronald Meer.
I think Ron Meer's had a couple tough elections. I don't want to say what's going to happen in the future. One thing to keep an eye on, though, Tom, or just to remember, is 4 years ago when Mayor Perry won, there were it was a four-way race, actually.
Yeah.
And you had a very fractured vote. I just pulled it up just now. You had three candidates that got over a quarter of the vote. You had another that got around 14% or so. So, one, it'll be interesting to see if anybody else hops in that race between now and the fall. But two, I think Michigan City is typically a more democratic city. Angie Deitch is somebody who's been, on the council and involved in the community for a while. So you just might see a different dynamic there this fall for a lot of reasons, but including the fact that you have a less fractured field. Yeah,
and Perry ended up, I think, being the first Republican mayor in Michigan City in decades, which is really, really unheard of in that regard. Still something to keep an eye on in that regard, but we've already got the first matchup set for the fall with Deutsch and Perry here in Michigan City. But a bit of a newcomer, I think, in that regard. So it'll be interesting to see if some other newcomers as well across Northwest Indiana are able to pull off any victories, including we're taking a look at Portage this evening with Austin Bonta as he faces off against former Portage Mayor John Cannon.
And I am seeing some results on that one, Tom. These look to me like they're fairly complete, but I don't want to say that for sure. But the first results that I'm seeing have Austin Bonta with a pretty healthy advantage over John Cannon. I haven't followed that race terribly closely, but that does strike me as a pretty significant result if that holds up.
Yeah, and I think we'll be getting into, I know Michael Gallenberger has the latest number updates, and Michael, if you're listening, I think we'll get to those right after the newscast here, and we'll wait for some more to be able to come in down the line here in the next 10 minutes or so as we wrap up the first hour of election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org as well as on Facebook. And if you've got comments, questions, if you want to know, who's winning or what races you're looking out for, again, some folks have some anxious demand for Portage and East Chicago, and one listener questioning, did Lowell have any assistance in publicizing the referendum to voters? And that's always, what kind of methods to the madness? We talked about the referendums, obviously, but, they're a bit different than a political campaign in terms of getting the word out there. And sometimes it's tough to be able to do that other than just word of mouth and maybe a local paper if your town or your community is lucky enough to have that. Facebook Lowell pages, I presume, are probably where a lot of that information was spread in that regard. But it'd be an interesting look into to see, especially as the evening progresses, how some of those other races for the referendums did in comparison to Lowell. But we'll be getting those as well, and we'll get some more on, as Jim said, with regards to Portage here in just a few minutes. But so far, the train moves along, so to speak. And we talked, obviously, about double track extension, and that I think is something that's going to end up popping up in Deutsch's campaign along with Dwayne Perry in Michigan City. But we do have Gary and Portage mayoral races as well, where those it's if you're looking at the map, it's Gary, Portage, and Michigan City are kind of really the beginning, middle, and end of the line when it comes to the new double track extension.
And all have construction ongoing.
And all have construction, and people are dealing with that, or but at the same time, there are positive things there and coming to Northwest Indiana. So how do those candidates, how do those campaigns spin those national dollars and keep them local and say, look at what I've done for you, when in reality they're coming from DC, right? But at the same time, it's kind of playing along, especially though if you're a Republican and they're coming from Democratic DC dollars, or if you're a Democrat and they're coming from Republican DC dollars, right? And being able to kind of, toe the line there, I suppose. But do the lines get blurred when it comes to local stuff, right? Maybe less infighting if it's, or, cross aisle fighting, because you're in the same town, you're in the same community, working towards the same goals. I would think it's a little bit easier, maybe.
Well, it happens all the time when you have federal government, federal money coming in. We've had some federal money coming in under Democratic administrations into Indiana. And for whatever various reasons, and Indiana doesn't give it credit. It just says, hey, we got this money, we're going to allocate it. That's just, they're telling their story. That's why, from my perspective, you need reporters to be able to decipher all that and tell you what the truth is behind all this. But if it's money that is going to help the public, either way, that's why we have people in Congress to bring back that money and spend it wisely. And Michigan City is one of those cities where it could, it's already looking nice, but it could really blossom in the future, given that double tracking. It's going to get commuting to Chicago a lot easier, because we know people are moving out that way. Southwest Michigan is right there. That's a big popular spot. You got the Indiana Dunes. Michigan City is one of those, could be juggernauts out there in terms of population growth. So you got a lot of exciting things coming their way.
And of all the communities in Northwest Indiana that are going to benefit from double tracking, Michigan City is right there at the top of the list because, one, you're seeing a lot of track upgrades in Michigan City, taking the track off street grade. You also are just going to have a significant decrease in the time that it takes to get from Michigan City to Millennium Station under the status quo. And there's the potential, too, for a lot of development around, transit-oriented development and things along those lines in Michigan City, which I'm sure are going to be a major issue in the race this fall. Double tracking is important to all these communities, but I think, if we're looking at a race to watch for the fall where double track issues are going to be front and center, I would keep an eye on Michigan City.
Yeah, and we'll have to obviously see as well what happens with Portage and Gary for those double track talks too, because infrastructure is one of those, and I think we'll be getting that here in the second hour of the coverage this evening. But infrastructure is a big one that I think almost every single candidate has touched on and hit on during this campaign cycle, wanting to be able to bring in more dollars and more businesses to their communities, especially after the government funds for COVID stopped coming in, right? And businesses closed their doors, and not a lot of them reopened afterwards, especially in the former brick and mortars locally. So it's going to be interesting to see how local mayors can, woo an Amazon, or they can woo some sort of a big player in shipping or in terms of logistics and trucking. Yeah,
big.
It really is. And so, being able to be a big player, and I look at somebody like an Eddie Melton, who's been doing his time down at the State House for the last couple of years and now wanting to come back home to Gary. Is he a major player in that kind of a situation in terms of making those agreements and knowing and networking, or does Jerome Prince hold him off and continue to build Gary in his vision?
Well, first of all, one of the best marketing things Michigan City can do is write on that NIPSCO water cooling tower and say, this is not a nuclear power plant, because everyone who goes from Chicago to the beach out there thinks it's a nuclear power plant.
But it looks like The Simpsons, right? So it looks like the big tower, the smoke coming up.
So here's the thing about Northwest Indiana. It still remains somewhat of a bastion, an outlier for Democrats, right? It's been historically Democratic leaning, but we know it's changing, and I'm always kind of, it's a tug of war. Is Northwest Indiana better off for being this blue bastion in a sea of red, or would it benefit us from flipping over? I don't know, but it just seems like in terms of dollars, economic development, somehow this area, no matter who's in office, needs to play well with Indianapolis, and there's always that tension.
And, Tom, you alluded to this. We'll see who's going to win that Gary race. But when we're talking about the importance of developing and maintaining connections with leaders in Indianapolis, which as a Democratic region in a Republican state is critical, it will be interesting to see if Eddie does end up prevailing, if the early results hold up, how he'll be able to call on those connections. I would imagine that Eddie Milton has a pretty big Rolodex, and I know that he's made a lot of connections in Indianapolis and around the country. Certainly if he's successful, I think, we all hope for the success of the next mayor, of whoever the next mayor of Gary is, and hope that he can work with those connections to support the city.
That's Jim Harper, and joining us in studios, Michael Puente. I'm Tom Maloney. You're listening to live election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM. Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000 plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today. You're listening to live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM. All politics are local, or so the saying goes. Tonight we're discussing not only the winners, but the reasons behind voting in an off-year election, as well as the common threads across the region: jobs, housing, quality of life, budgets, and more. And of course, we've got early numbers in already, and the victorious candidate from Michigan City, Angie Nelson Deutsch, who we spoke with earlier this evening, victorious in the Democratic primary. She'll face off against Dwayne Perry in the fall for Michigan City mayor, but still more races to be called, more races to get those numbers from. We'll be getting them from Michael Gallenberger coming up right after the news here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, WLPR FM Lowell. It's 8:01.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. Following the announcement the U.S. could be unable to pay its bills as early as June 1st, some members of the House appear to be moving to try and force a debt limit increase. House lawmakers are hoping to employ a tactic that would allow them to work around the Republican majority by receiving support from a handful of GOP lawmakers to employ a legislative maneuver. NPR's Scott Horsley has more on the ongoing standoff.
It's hard to say exactly when the crunch time will come or which bills would go unpaid. Maybe it'd be Social Security recipients or members of the military. Maybe it'd be doctors who treat Medicare patients or the holders of government bonds. But if the debt limit is not increased and the government actually runs short of cash, someone's going to be left empty-handed.
President Biden has called on the respective sides to meet next week to discuss a way out of the impasse. California's Reparations Task Force has released a draft proposal suggesting payments of up to $1.2 million to eligible residents. KQED's Annalise Finney reports the recommendation is part of a larger package of policies meant to remedy anti-black discrimination throughout the state's history.
Among dozens of policy changes, the task force is suggesting uniform payments based on how many years someone lived in the state when discriminatory policies were in place. $1.2 million is the suggested maximum. More could be added to this by the legislature, and the draft suggests additional compensation for people who can prove individual harms. To ease the burden on the state, Task Force Chair Camila Moore says this compensation could come
not through one-time lump sum payments, but over the course of years, decades even, through installments.
The recommendations go to the legislature in July. For NPR News, I'm Annalise Finney.
Russia's war in Ukraine was high on the agenda as the U.S. ambassador to the UN visited Brazil today. The U.S. was disappointed with recent remarks by Brazil's president. It was here from NPR's Michelle Kellerman.
Brazil currently sits on the UN Security Council, and that's one reason Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield came here. While Brazil has backed some resolutions condemning Russia's war in Ukraine, President Luiz Ignacio Lula da Silva raised eyebrows when he criticized the West for encouraging the war. Thomas-Greenfield says Brazil should get Ukraine's perspective.
So I recommended and encouraged and understand that the government has engaged Ukraine and that there will be an upcoming visit to Ukraine in the coming weeks.
She also met Brazil's First Lady to talk about poverty and racial discrimination. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Brasilia.
Stocks closed lower on Wall Street today as shares of beleaguered banks tumbled again and concerns about the economy worsened. The Dow dropped 367 points to 33,684. The Nasdaq was down 132 points today. You're listening to NPR. Regional Mexican music is having a moment on the Billboard charts. For the first time, two songs are in the top 5 of the Hot 100, as we hear from NPR's Isabella Gomez Sarmiento.
A scrawny 23-year-old singer from Guadalajara, who goes by the name Peso Pluma, recently made Mexican music history. His song Ella Baila Sola with Eslabón Armado became the first regional Mexican song to ever break into the top 10 last month. It's still there at number 4 and joined by a second song. This time, a cumbia by Puerto Rican pop star Bad Bunny, alongside the Mexican band Grupo Frontera. Both successes indicate that the genre from northern Mexico is gaining massive traction and global appeal. Isabella Gomez Sarmiento, NPR News.
A crackdown against a dark web marketplace known as the Monopoly Market is being cited as the largest operation of its kind by authorities in Europe and the U.S. They say the international enforcement effort resulted in the arrest of nearly 300 individuals and the confiscation of more than $53 million. The market, a platform for sales of drugs and other illicit goods on the dark web, also involved the seizure of hundreds of kilograms of drugs and 117 weapons in a total of 8 countries. Crude oil futures prices took a major hit today amid concerns about the looming U.S. debt crisis. Oil dropped $4 a barrel today to end the session at $71.66 a barrel in New York. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Katina Foundation, supporting the Asylum Seeker Advocacy Project, providing more than 100,000 asylum seekers in the U.S. with community and legal support. Learn more at asylum.news.
It's 8:06. Good evening. You're listening to live election coverage from Lakeshore Public Media. Final numbers from Porter County. For the Republican ballot for Mayor City of Valparaiso, John Costas, 1,504, Art Elwood, 306. For Portage, Mayor Austin Banta, 1,125, John M. Cannon, 670. Turning to the Democratic Party ballot for Porter County, Mayor City of Valparaiso, Pamela Schrader, 447, Hannah Trueblood, 833. Those are the final numbers from Porter County. Turning now to Lake County election results. Public question for Highland Schools, 585 yes, 571 no. Public question Munster Schools, 1,185 yes, 576 no. Public question Tri Creek Schools, 906 yes, 1,753 no. Turning now to the Democratic ballot for Lake County, Mayor East Chicago, Anthony Copeland, 1,504, Adrian Santos, 1,013. For Mayor City of Gary, Jerome A. Prince, 1,766, Eddie Melton, 2,756. Taking a look at some of the council races, William Godwin so far is on track to lose his seat for the top three for the at-large race. He's trailing. He's in fourth place, I believe, in that. So again, if the results hold, William G. Godwin would lose a seat on the Gary City Council. In the District 2, similar story for David Fawcett. He's currently trailing, and he would again lose a seat if results hold. Similar in Hammond, incumbent Pete Torres with 50 votes for the District 2 race for a Democratic primary. Pete Torres trailing Alfonso L. Salinas with 146 votes. Again, Pete Torres with just 50. Mayor City of Hobart, Josh Huddleston, 1,736. Jerry Allen Herzog, 384. Mayor of Lake Station on the Democratic Party ticket, Bill Carroll, 755. Neil Anderson, 325. Turning now to the Republican Party race. For Mayor of East Chicago, Travis Adonis Francis, 29. Arthur Santos Jr., 37. And once again, reviewing the numbers in the Mayor of Michigan City race on the Democratic Party ticket, Angie Nelson Deitch, 1,434. Michael Mack, 70. Ron Muir, 406. Johnny Stimley, 404. Mark S. Yagelski, 482. Again, those are final numbers from LaPorte County. For Lakeshore News, I'm Michael Gallenberger.
Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000 plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today.
As your Northwest Indiana public broadcasting station, Lakeshore Public Media's goal is to serve you with a radio broadcast that engages, excites, and inspires. Help your local station reach that goal better by sharing your thoughts. Whether you tune in occasionally or have made us a part of your daily routine, your opinions matter. Visit lakeshorepublicradio.org/feedback to help us build a stronger community station.
Two of America's largest grocery store chains are attempting a $25 billion merger, but some are worried about being supermarkets swept under the rug. The deal could mean fewer stores and less grocery access for those in greatest need. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
Tune in daily at noon for The Takeaway here on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM.
You're listening to live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, as well as on Facebook. Joining me here in studios, Jim Harper, as well as Michael Puente. I am Tom Maloney, and can't do it without the great team here at Lakeshore Public Media. Jose Rodriguez manning the board, D. Dotson, the producer this evening, and Russell Broadhawker is hanging out and chatting with all of you on the Facebook live stream. And joining us on the phone now is Will Skipworth, education reporter for the Times of Northwest Indiana, to discuss the referenda question for 3 towns, including Highland, Munster, and Lowell. Will, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for being here. And we've already seen some of the numbers trickling in this evening, and Tri Creek Schools in Lowell is taking a pretty hard loss. About almost 66% of the voters voting no on that. Meanwhile, in Munster, it looks like it's going to pass with almost 68% voting yes. And Highland is still too close to call, with a difference of only about 14 votes between yes and no, with the yeses leading with almost 51% of the vote. School referendas, typically in Northwest Indiana, they pass. Not the case, though, in Tri Creek. And we did have one listener who chimed in and wanted to know if there was any help for getting the word out about school referendas. How does that process work, Will, in terms of school boards trying to get those referendas passed?
Right. So it is pretty difficult. You're right. They're limited on what they can and can't do campaign-wise. They can't spend money, district money, to print out pamphlets, stuff like that. So a lot of it is word of mouth. A lot of it is kind of getting out there. We ran a story in the Times of Northwest Indiana where we talked for each of these, the referendum. We talked to the superintendent, and they were all pretty insistent that this is something we really need. So I know the folks at Tri Creek School Corporation, the superintendent, and the school board, are real disappointed about this result right now if it stands.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the form of the public questions. Like they read, frankly, like a college level graduate paper. Guys, you've got copies of them, I think, in front of you here as well. Like you look at them, it's like there's numbers and paragraphs, and I got to look at that on a tiny screen and then figure out if I'm voting in favor of it or not. It feels a lot easier to just say no and walk out of there, but. Pretty telling and maybe ultimately pretty damning in terms of the fact that, again, we talked about this earlier this evening, Tri Creek, this was the only thing on the ballot for Lowell voters. There is no city council race. There is no county council race. There is no town council race. There is no mayor. There's nothing else to vote for other than their school referenda. Meanwhile, Highland and Munster looks like it's going to pass, though I don't know the last time Munster didn't pass a school referenda bill, or rather referenda question. Has that happened in the last decade at all?
Yeah, there has been, but you're right that it's been common. 10 Lake County school districts have passed this type of referendum really recently. Crown Point, Gary, Griffith, Hammond, Hanover, Hobart, Lake Central, Lake Station, Munster in 2017, and River Forest. You mentioned the ballot languages, which is really interesting. So you're definitely right about that. That's something Tri Creek Superintendent Andy Anderson was actually afraid of. He told me before Election Day, that language is dictated by the state, and he was worried that question might be misleading and make voters think that their taxes would increase by about 25%, when in reality that figure refers to how much money the district would have received if it passed. He said that the majority of homeowners would only see their property taxes increase by 4 to 11%.
Yeah, the question reads, and here's the statement: if this public question is approved by the voters, the average property tax paid to the school corporation per year on a residence would increase by 25.5%, and the average property tax paid to the school corporation per year on a business property would increase by 24.5%. That reads to me
that my taxes are going up by 25% for funding education. And so it comes from the state, but is there a way, did Highlands have to come from the state? Did Munster's come from the state as well?
Right. The state has pretty strict rules on how it has to be worded, and that wording kind of comes from the state mostly.
So as Michael Puente pointed out earlier, the State House, or was it Jim? I can't remember. The State House, doesn't do the work that they need to do in order to fund the schools, relies on the voters to turn around and fund the schools, but then says it in a way that makes voters not want to fund education. It feels like it's a slippery slope, and I can't run uphill very fast in a pair of Chuck Converse shoes here that I'm wearing this evening, Will.
Yeah, definitely.
So what do we look out for here as the rest of the evening continues, as we still await the latest on Highland and Munster?
Right. So Highland is really razor thin. That's really close. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Before this referendum, it had the lowest tax rate of any school district in Lake County. It was 67.5 cents per $100,000 of assessed valuation. If this passes, that'd bump up to 99.54 cents. So that'll be really interesting. And they want to use that money to increase teacher pay, improve school safety, and maintain educational programming. The increasing teacher pay is the big one, and that's something that Tri-Creek said too, and that's something Munster said too. Right now, the starting base salary for teachers in the 2022-23 school year in Highland was $44,500. When you compare that to Lake Central, which is neighboring district, they pay their starting teachers $53,000. Hammond to the north pays them $49,000. That's all according to their collective bargaining agreement. Mm-hmm. So they framed it really as this is what we have to do to compete.
Yeah, and if you're making those cuts as well, in Highland, Levy would bring in nearly $4.8 million annually for 8 years. And if it doesn't pass, you're looking at bigger class sizes and a tougher time teaching students, nonetheless. So we will definitely keep an eye on that for the remainder of the evening. Will Skipworth, education reporter for the Times of Northwest Indiana, joining us here on primary election night and ultimately final election night for 3 school referendas for Highland, Munster, and Tri-Creek, School Town of Highland, School Town of Munster, and Tri-Creek School Corporation. Will, thank you so much for joining us here this evening.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be waiting here to get the latest from Valparaiso, and hopefully getting Hannah Trueblood on, who looks like she is going to be the winner of the Democratic primary for Valparaiso mayor, and ultimately probably going up against John Costas, as Costas has about 83% of the vote from the Republicans, and Trueblood has about 64% of the vote from Democrats in Valparaiso. And so it'll be an interesting one this fall, as, again, John Costas looking to get back into his old mayoral seat, and Hannah Trueblood coming in and saying, we need fresh blood. We need fresh ideas, no pun intended in that regard, to be able to bring Valparaiso to where she thinks it should be. And I'm told, do we have her on the line now, Jose? We've got Hannah on the line. Hannah, are you there with us?
I'm here.
Congratulations on your presumptive Democratic win this evening for the Democratic mayoral race in Valparaiso.
Thank you. It's a historic moment. This will be the first woman to even be on the ballot for the general.
That's a pretty big thing, especially for Valparaiso, that I think some of us have probably just assumed at some point or another, a woman has never been on the ballot for mayor in Valpo. That's a surprise. Hannah, earlier this evening we had a chance to talk with Angie Nelson Deitch, the Michigan City Democratic winner, and we asked her, why did she run? We'll ask you as well. Why did you ultimately decide to throw your hat into the ring to be the Valparaiso mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been involved in politics and community advocacy and activism since I was 8 years old, and the need for voices who actually care about the people instead of just the pocketbooks has grown substantially, I believe. And so that has been, a really big determining factor for me for putting my name in is, there's only so much that you can do on the outside, in terms of advocacy and activism. Eventually, you need to take the natural next step and become the person who is writing and passing those policies and laws that we've been advocating for and that the people here deserve.
So what is it that you want to see changed in Valparaiso?
Well, first and foremost, we really need to see some more transparency on, how the decisions are being made and just overall reaching out into the community and finding out what is it that they need and what is it that they want, and really taking that guidance from the community members that are being represented here, and excuse me, and really moving forward with ideas from a more diverse background instead of just this hive mind behind a closed door. That is really the forefront of my platform, and my goal is less of the same old, and more of a future forward thinking, progressive ideology that's going to really bring Valparaiso into the 21st century and beyond.
This is a city of Valparaiso, though, for the last 20 years at least, that has had a Republican mayor. It currently has a Republican city council as well. Is one person or is one race going to change Valparaiso in that regard?
It all starts with one, and that's how you move the needle in the right direction. And, we've been Republican controlled for, like you said, for a long time. And a lot of that stemmed from, 20-something years ago when the city was hungry for something fresh and something new. And that something fresh and something new came and went. And now it's time for the next generation of leaders to do that same thing and move it forward in an even better way.
Hannah Trueblood, the presumptive nominee for the Democratic primary race for Valparaiso mayor. Looks like you will be facing off against former Mayor John Costas, who has about 83% of the vote on the Republican ticket this evening. Hannah, congratulations on your victory, and we will be talking with you again in the near future.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate the time and the opportunity and look forward to this race.
All right, take care. That is Hannah Trueblood, of the Trueblood Realty family, not reality, Realty family, across Northwest Indiana. And Hannah ultimately, or not ultimately, but at one point saying that she had gotten involved in local politics because she wanted her kids to grow up in Valparaiso that she felt would be better for her kids. And ultimately, I think everybody wants what's best for their kids, which is why local elections matter, right? We're all in this for our kids, whether it's our own children in our household or it's the neighbor kid down the street or somebody else in your neighborhood. You want them to be able to have a better life moving forward in that regard. Something interesting, though, I should note about Pamela Schrader. Sources told me that she initially tried to get off of the ballot for the Democratic primary and then wasn't able to because it was after the cutoff date, and so she just stuck around on the ballot, which isn't completely uncommon, but she did garner about 36% of the vote from the Democratic ticket, so interesting to see there nonetheless. But John Costas, we're trying to get him on the line right now if possible. 1,240 votes compared to Trueblood's 607. Jim, you're a Valpo guy. Feels like a lot of folks showed up tonight to tell Art Elwood stay home and get Costas, in the seat again.
One of the storylines that I was thinking about, or talking about at the top of the program, Tom, was, whether there was a significant Republican vote for Mr. Elwood against Mayor Costas, and it seems like the answer to that is no. And the mayor had a strong victory tonight, and I think that certainly he's got to be pleased with that going into the fall. Hannah, though, also as a first-time candidate, needs to be pleased with those results as well. So there's going to be a lot of contrast in leading on to November, and both candidates tonight, I think, are probably going to be pretty pleased with how things turned out.
Yep, and we're going to switch gears and go from the Democratic ticket to the Republican ticket in Valparaiso, joined now by former Valpo Mayor John Costas. John, welcome to Lakeshore Public Media's
primary election night coverage here.
Glad to be with you.
Congratulations on your victory this evening over Art Elwood in the Republican primary race. And, John, I got to ask, you stepped down and now you're coming back. What brings you back into the mayoral race?
Well, I think leadership goes where it's needed, and with Mayor Murphy stepping down, I think it left a big gap in leadership for the city, and a gap that I was uniquely qualified to step into. I love public service. I certainly love the city of Valparaiso. It's a good time for me. I'm not practicing law. I'm not raising kids, so I can focus my efforts really squarely on what's happening in the city, because there's a lot happening. And so, yeah, I'm enjoying it thoroughly, and so grateful for the vote here this evening.
What can you tell us about the last couple of years that you spent on the Valparaiso School Board and what that means for a potential run for Valpo Mayor?
Yeah, so I think the unique, I do, of course, bring a lot of leadership experience, but I bring it in different sectors, too, so whether it be education or business or nonprofit. I've led organizations in virtually every segment. I also served on the state's Higher Education Commission for about 14 years, and so being on the school board has been, a great experience, and has helped me to understand K-12 education. We have a fantastic school system, and I've learned a lot along the way. But it's just, I think, experiencing, the different sectors of our city, again, whether it be, education or business or nonprofit or the faith community, which I've been very involved in too. It just helps you to be a well-rounded person and understand where people are at and what the needs of the city are. And I've been on a kind of a listening tour, and really leadership begins with listening. So learning a lot, while we had a great run those 16 years, you can't, it's always about the future. And so you have to make sure that you listen well and are responsive to the people who elect you. So that's the goal here, certainly in the next 6 months.
And what would a future in Valparaiso look like with you at the helm as mayor again?
Well, it's first of all, knowing what the citizens want. You always have to realize that vision. I think vision is organic. It comes up from the people that you serve, and so you don't want to assume things. You want to listen before you take action. But of course, the city was a whole lot different when I took it over in my first term. The downtown was on life support. There were many areas of the city that were run down. The roads were in good shape. So it's really about strengthening those things that really matter to citizens, and the parks, the roads, the downtown, keeping taxes low, running an efficient government. I mean, we were always careful to bring a creatively frugal approach so that when we built a building or improved an area, we always tried to find the best value for the dollar. That's important, so that you can keep taxes reasonable. But I think Valpo's got an excellent future. We're going to continue growing at about 1% a year. So we've got to add some homes, because the demand is so great. So we'll be looking to do that, even though it's certainly challenging to build anything these days. But and we got some big projects that Mayor Murphy has teed up that have to be executed very well. That will be really our concern from day one, is to make sure those projects get done on budget and in a quality way. And then as we do that, as we listen to the people that we serve, we'll forge the next vision and begin to implement that over time too. So I'm bullish on the city, and I think it's going to be awesome. I hope to have the opportunity to lead it here in November, and I just think there's going to be some great days ahead.
That's former Mayor John Costas joining us this evening. As John, you are victorious in the Valparaiso Republican primary. Again, results not official, but final. Defeating Art Elwood this evening. It looks like this fall you'll be going up against Hannah Trueblood from the Democratic ticket. John, congratulations and best of luck to you moving forward in your campaign. We'll be talking with you again over the next couple of weeks and months as well.
Sounds good. Great to be with you. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, John. And, of course, he made mention of now current Mayor Matt Murphy, who is stepping down from his role as mayor. He will now run for a city council at-large position. And John, who stepped down, who was then appointed to the Valparaiso School Board, is now going to step down from that, run for mayor, and maybe he'll turn around then and
put John Costas on the seat for Valpo School Board, put Matt Murphy on the seat for Valpo School Board. But Murphy has a job opportunity in which he has to be in the office 5 to 7 days a week in Chesterton, and won't be able to dedicate the time that he would need to otherwise to be the mayor of Valparaiso. So a little bit of a flip-flop there. Feels very much like taking one quarterback out and putting another quarterback in. And we're going to switch gears, though, really quick, as we did talk about the beginning of the show this evening that, some of these races this evening are for the mayoral race because there is not a Republican candidate on the ballot. Though, Jim, as you said earlier this eevening, you could always throw somebody on the ballot later on this summer, but I don't think it really works that often. We're now joined on the studio line by Josh Huddleston, the presumptive winner for tonight's Hobart race, garnering nearly 82% of the vote on the Democratic ticket. John, welcome to election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So why did you ultimately decide to go ahead and run for mayor of Hobart?
Well, it's Mayor Snedeker not seeking re-election. My 2 terms on the council. I kind of felt it was kind of a natural progression in kind of the city. We're a lifelong resident here. And we just want to see what's, kind of steer the city in the direction that we want to go for the future for our children. And, I got 3 small kids, so I want to just kind of steer the direction of the city for them and everyone else's kids here in the city.
So let's talk about your role. You're a Hobart City Councilman. How did that help prepare you for this race and ultimately is going to prepare you for being the mayor of Hobart?
Just kind of being around City Hall, having those conversations with the mayor, kind of seeing what the job entails and kind of understanding, kind of the day-to-day operations of the mayor. I feel like, being a city councilman and the experience has really put me in a good position to kind of take that next step in the maturation of the city and just being around it every day and seeing the budget and going through that process and seeing the legislative side of the city. I mean, I really feel like that puts me, in a good position in terms of taking the next step to the mayor.
Can you talk with me about what that change was like at the at City Hall as Mayor Brian Snedeker switched from the Democratic ticket to the Republican ticket and still having to be able to work with him at a local level despite the fact that he switched parties really right after he was reelected mayor?
Yeah, you know what? Brian's a good man and the council trusts his leadership and we work together well. I mean, we're one of the one of the councils and mayor relationship that's really well gelled. We talk a lot. We have a lot of conversations. I mean, when you're looking at parties locally, I mean, to us, when you switch parties, yeah, it hurt us a little bit. But at the end of the day, we're here for the betterment of the city of Hobart. So, we want to work together and do what's best for the city. So, parties, on the national level get a lot of, there's a lot of scrutiny on that. But locally, we're here to do what's best for the city of Hobart. And whether you're a D or an R, we're here to move the city forward.
What is the city going to look like moving forward under your term as mayor?
One of the things that we do, we're energetic. We're leaning on technology. We're going to be transparent. Our communication is going to be a lot different. We're going to be aggressive in going after development and making sure that the city of Hobart wins as many times as we can. One of the things that we do every Monday night at 7 o'clock, we did a live video during the campaign and just being completely and honest, transparent, doing a Q&A with the residents, and it resonated well. And we don't know the exact totals, but 82% of the vote. I think the voters appreciated that transparency and honesty and felt like their voices were heard. So if you look at the future of the city moving forward, you're going to get someone that's transparent in the mayor's office and utilizes technology to the best of its ability and really connect with the residents and constituents.
Josh Huddleston, presumptive Democratic winner for the Democratic primary for Hobart Mayor, joining us here on election night on Lakeshore Public Media. And Josh, again, assuming the Republicans or any sort of an independent party doesn't throw a candidate on there for you in the fall, though I don't think it tends to work out too well for a candidate being added last second. You are, at this point, the presumptive mayor-elect for the city of Hobart. Congratulations on your victory this evening, and we'll be talking with you again in the future.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
You're listening to live election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org as well as on Facebook. We'll be back after this break. Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000-plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today.
Lakeshore Public Media's brand new radio antenna has been installed, and we could use your help to learn how the signal is performing in your neck of the woods. Please take a moment and visit lakeshorepublicradio.org/feedback to let us know.
Two of America's largest grocery store chains are attempting a $25 billion merger, but some are worried about being supermarket swept under the rug. The deal could mean fewer stores and less grocery access for those in greatest need. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
Tune in daily at noon for The Takeaway here on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM.
He turned us on to so many great bands.
Angel City, April Wine, Scorps, AC/DC, Point Blank, Kansas, Rush.
Now he's bringing them back, scratchy vital and all.
Welcome to Don's Basement.
Hi, it's Don Clark. Join me each week down here in the basement as we uncork some vintage rock that has not seen the light of day in a long, long time.
Don's Basement tapes, Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. on 89.1 WLPR, Lakeshore Public Radio, and lakeshorepublicradio.org.
This is live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM. I'm Tom Maloney, joined in studio by Michael Puente and Jim Harper. Manning the board is Jose Rodriguez. Producing this evening is Dee Dotson. And manning the other board on social media is Russell Broadhawker. Fellas, we've just kind of went through the rapid fire of Josh Huddleston, who looks like he is going to be the next the next mayor of Hobart, winning the Democratic primary, beating former city councilman Jerry Herzog. We have, of course, just heard from John Costas, the former Valparaiso mayor and current Valpo school board member, who is going to be facing off against Hannah Trueblood in the Valparaiso mayoral's race coming up this fall. We're still waiting, though, on the latest from both Portage and Gary. Right now, Austin Bonta has about a 62% lead over John Cannon's 38% in that race.
Those are pretty final, Tom.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing. I don't want to say that for sure, but I think Austin's in a pretty good position there.
And maybe we can try to reach out to Bonta's campaign to see if he's available to chat. And I know Eddie Melton is actually speaking now on his own Facebook page. I can only assume declaring victory. The last updated numbers we had from nearly an hour ago, Eddie Melton had a 1,000 vote lead, 2756 to Jerome Prince's 1776, or a 61 to 39% lead in terms of vote total. And an off-year primary like this, it's really, really tough to make up that kind of ground. Heck, it's tough to even make up a couple of hundred votes on that kind of a night. So if we can, the next 20 minutes or so, try to get a hold of Bonta and Melton, we will definitely do so as we keep an eye on the remaining races of the evening. Any big surprises thus far as we come to almost the end of the night in terms of the election night coverage? Any races or anybody coming away with a victory that has surprised either of you?
You know, I've been most surprised by just the magnitude of Austin Bonta's victory in the Republican primary in Portage. You know, John Cannon fulfilled the end of a mayoral term, the last term before Mayor Lynch was elected, and, certainly has been somebody who, has been campaigning for a while, and to see that significant of a win for Austin Bonta, I think is is noteworthy. I think Mayor Lynch, is in a strong position going into the fall, but that's certainly going to be a very competitive election. One of the, I think, elections to watch in Northwest Indiana this fall.
It certainly will be. Bonta is definitely, I think, at this point, probably one of the youngest candidates we've seen on a mayoral ticket in Northwest Indiana. Same thing with Hannah Trueblood, as she earlier said that, she's going to be the first female candidate for the Valparaiso mayoral race, which was kind of a surprise. Michael, what have you seen this evening?
Well, I think if Eddie Melton is declaring victory this early on, the bottom line is, okay, so you're the mayor of Gary now, or you're the mayor of anywhere, but definitely Gary. What does this mean? I mean, you're inheriting a city that has a lot of issues. I mean, we don't have to, cat's out of the bag on that one. Jerome Prince, did an admirable job, but you have a city that continues to decline in population. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but the footprint of Gary is the size of San Francisco. But the population, it's not there. And I'm still somewhat of amazed how either successful Northwest Indiana has been without one of its major cities thriving. And we got to know whoever mayor is in there has a mountain of a hill to climb in economic development. What are they going to do on the lake? I know they got this land-based casino now. It's one of the top casinos in the state of Indiana, but just down the street, 8 miles down the street is Homewood. They're Homewood, East Hazelcrest. They're going to build a casino there. They're going to be open in about a year. How's that going to impact Gary? How's it going to impact Hammond? Then once City of Chicago gets its big downtown casino, what will that mean? What will that mean for the Hard Rock Casino? We already seen Hard Rock was one of the bidders to open a casino in the city of Chicago, which at the time they were just opening their one in Gary, and the one in Chicago would have been 3 times the size of that. So it almost makes you wonder, what is their overall strategy in Northwest Indiana or commitment when you can just outside of the one you just opened, and I think they also have one in Rockford, you would have that big one in Chicago. So you're not going to tell me that wouldn't have impact Gary. So Gary, Eddie Melton, if he's declaring victory, I know he's on Facebook. I haven't heard it. He's on live. He's got a big mountain to climb, and I'm sure he's going to do it one day at a time. Of course, the general election hasn't come and gone. He just won the primary. It would be nice if Northwest Indiana can emulate Chicago. One aspect is getting those runoff races out of the way. Why should somebody who just won now have to wait all the way until January to take over?
Yeah, and that's, I think, sort of interesting in that regard where, if you're the winner tonight, you're not going to have to face anybody in the fall. Granted, there is a Republican candidate on the list. I actually have to pull up his name because I don't remember who it is.
I got
Andrew Delano. But it's like, when's the last time there's a Republican mayor in Gary? He's garnered 80 votes this evening.
Well, go ahead, Jim.
No. All I was going to say, and I think you were alluding to it, Michael, is that we know whoever wins the primary. Obviously, there's going to be an election in the fall, but I think we'd all be quite surprised if the winner of the Democratic primary in Gary tonight did not become the mayor come January the 1st. And you're absolutely right. It is unfortunate that we have 7 months between when we know who the next mayor is going to be and their ability to kind of get in the saddle and start to make decisions about the future of the city. It's important for any community in Northwest Indiana. It's particularly important for a community like Gary that has a lot of challenges and important issues that it's facing. I will say, if there's anybody I think that can play a critical role in, Gary helping to turn around some of the things that have not been going as well in Gary, I think it's Eddie Melton. He is somebody who has been a leader in this state, brings a lot of energy to this job, a lot of optimism to this job, which I think is important. And my hope is that one area that he will excel in, and I think if he becomes the mayor, he will, is working to unite this region around Gary. Northwest Indiana is only going to do as well as Gary does, and we need Gary to succeed in order for the rest of this region to succeed. And my hope is that that Eddie can help to make that happen.
And it's always one of those things too when you boot a mayor out after one term. It feels like making the switch on a head coach after just a couple of years. Now you're resetting and restarting, in the first couple of years for a mayoral race, or for a mayoral candidate rather, is just kind of figuring out how to be mayor. What did the other guy do? What do I have to do now to either fix what the other guy did, or what football, so to speak, am I picking up and running with to continue to try to move forward? Do I just abandon what somebody else has been working for the last 4 years on? Do I pick it up and try to move it forward? There's a lot that goes into it, and voters really want, especially when it comes to Gary, I think, voters really want a pretty quick turnaround. They've been promised a lot through the years, and if you don't deliver on somebody else's promises, they're still going to hang that over your head. And whether it's the guillotine or not, for your political career, it's still something that you ultimately have to face when you come in as the mayor. We'll get into that and more in the next couple of minutes, but we got to take one more quick break here. You're listening to live election night coverage on Lakeshore Public Media.
Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000 plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today.
This is live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org as well as on Facebook. Joined in studio this evening by Michael Puente from WBEZ and Jim Harper. Manning the boards is Jose Rodriguez. Producing this evening is Dee Dotson. And, of course, chatting with all of you on social media is Russell Broadhawker. I am Tom Maloney, and we are working frantically to get the last couple of minutes in here and possibly talking with Eddie Melton. He is still speaking. I've been told he's got about 5 minutes left of his speech. He is actually still in the process of wrapping up, I suppose, his victory speech, so to speak. But again, looking to try to get a hold of Eddie before we wrap up this evening, and we cannot track down. I've lost it somewhere. I feel like the kid going to the teacher. I had the homework. I don't know what I did with it, but Austin Bonta, we can't track down his contact info this evening, trying to reach out to him, but it looks like he's going to be victorious in the Portage race and will be facing off against Democratic candidate and incumbent mayor Sue Lynch this fall. Lynch had previously defeated John Cannon, who was running again for the Republican ticket. Cannon, the appointed mayor following the Jim Snyder tow truck scandal from 4.5 years ago at this point, I think, just shortly before Sue Lynch took over as mayor, defeating Cannon as he took over for Snyder for the last couple of months at the end of his term there. Nonetheless, a lot of races coming to a close as we look across the landscape of Northwest Indiana. Looks like Bill Carroll, the incumbent mayor for Lake Station, is victorious this evening over former city councilman Neil Anderson. Anderson was city councilman for 1st District in Lake Station, moved out of 1st District, and then proceeded to not take any phone calls and talk to anybody, and then had to get tracked down by Jim Weezer, who's the Democratic chair, and say, hey, you've moved, you can't be in the spot anymore. And as a result, he then decided to go ahead and run for Lake Station mayor. We had that debate here on Lakeshore Public Media, of course, hearing it earlier today, but just a couple of weeks ago as well. And, one of those things, it's infrastructure and it's jobs. And that's something all local communities are working on trying to get. We've got just a couple of minutes here if we're not able to get a hold of Eddie Melton, but let's kind of dig into that. Being mayor today is a lot different than being mayor
probably 20 or 30 years ago. And in some places, just because you're mayor doesn't mean you got the keys to the city, where you deal with a very powerful and strong city council. So what is navigating the waters of a mayoralship in Northwest Indiana like these days?
Well, I hate to keep drawing the comparisons to Chicago, but look what happened to Lori Lightfoot. COVID just interrupted her whole mayoral thing. But I think she did an admirable job. I think she kept the public informed. Same thing with Jerome Prince. I mean, he was the mayor of this unprecedented wave of illness that was killing everybody. I know there's a segment of society who thinks it was a hoax and it was phony and all that stuff. But for us in reality world, it was very serious. It's very scary. So when a politician comes into office, whatever plans that they have can get derailed in a heartbeat. Now, we know
not on the double track. Not on the double track.
But now we know Jerome Prince had some lofty goals, especially for the Genesis Convention Center. He wanted to bring a tech company in there. That didn't work out. Now you've got this biofuel company looking to open up a big refinery in the city of Gary. That's kind of controversial. Does Gary need more industry like that? A city like Gary, it's difficult to turn away that kind of investment, but sometimes for the betterment of your people, their health, and maybe you need to do another look at it. But either way, Gary, I'd say, good luck to the next mayor of Gary, because they're going to need, no matter who it is. But definitely maybe Eddie Melton will have a stronger connection to Indiana, state of Indiana downstate, just because of his connections being down there as a state senator.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jim, any thoughts in terms of what life is like as a mayor or a member of a city council, sort of being able to not necessarily strong arm, but, kind of push through what you want. We've seen pretty powerful mayors like Tom McDermott Jr. in Hammond, who's running this evening unopposed, and I think actually unopposed in the fall as well, if I'm not mistaken. Former mayor of Crown Point, David Uran, who passed the keys off to Pete Land, who now is running unopposed in the Democratic primary. But, McDermott and Uran really being able to create their ideal sort of situations, so to speak, for their own mayoralships. Even John Costas, for the better part of 16 years, Matt Murphy taking on a lot of what he's done. And, in that regard, we're actually going to have to hold that thought for just a moment. We're actually joined on the studio line now by Lake Station Mayor Bill Carroll, who is the presumptive Democratic primary nominee over Neil Anderson this evening. Mayor Carroll, welcome to Lakeshore Public Media.
Hello, how are you?
Doing well, and congratulations on your victory this evening.
Thank you very much. It's been a long race. It's been a long, non-factual race. And once again, positivity and a outlook that is favorable for citizens and it's realistic came about on top.
And Bill, we actually we had the debate between yourself and Neil Anderson at the Lake Station New Chicago Public Library just a couple of weeks ago, and so listeners from all across Northwest Indiana got to find out a little bit about what's happening in Lake Station. Over the last 4 years for you've kind of had to do a 180 in terms of being able to bring Lake Station forward. What do you expect? Should you be victorious in the fall over Benjamin Fontes Jr., who is unopposed on the Republican ticket this evening? What would the next 4 years look like?
Well, first of all, I will be victorious over whoever the Republicans throw at me. Ben Fontes Jr. I have gathered the positive momentum in the city of Lake Station that we are moving forward. We are not looking back in the past, and we will continue to grow as a city together. So we'll work with the citizens and also make sure at the end of the day, I will not let nothing that is not in the best interest of the city go through.
So does that mean there's not going to be any boat rentals because of the beavers anytime soon?
Well, you know those beavers, they just pop everywhere.
Yeah, they do. They do. And for folks who...
the angry beavers, Tom. You know how they are.
Yep, I know. We had a really great debate. And one of those things I was going to ask, regardless of you or Neil this evening, was, local sports...
Do you have a doubt, though? Are we on live radio?
Yep, we are live. We are live.
Okay.
Local sports in Lake Station, is that something that is on your ticket in terms of wanting to be able to bring back?
Absolutely. I mean, let's be realistic here. Absolutely. I mean, why would I not want this for our youth? Why would I not push for it? I brought a group here that has a board that did everything the right way. Once again, we need parental involvement in order to move forward. The city cannot take on all that responsibility, nor do we have the manpower for it. We will be able to support and help in any kind of youth activity whatsoever, and we'll be more than happy to. But once again, we need a board that's not made up of members of the city and all that kind of stuff to get together and put something together for our youth. That's where it lies at.
Mayor Carroll, congratulations again on your victory this evening as the presumptive Democratic nominee for Lake Station. Looking to
how do I call myself? What do I call myself here? There,
I think you're still Mayor Bill. I think that's what we'll still call you, Mayor Bill. Congratulations on your victory this evening, and we wish you the best of luck. We'll definitely be talking with you again in the near future.
Absolutely, I look forward to it. Thank you for all that you do and keeping the region advised on what's important.
And we thank you for joining us here this evening.
All right. Thank you very much. Once again, #Team Lake Station.
#Team Lake Station. There you go. That is Mayor Bill Carroll victorious this evening over former City Councilman Neil Anderson. We're trying to reach out still to Austin Bonta from Portage, as he looks like he is victorious this evening over John Cannon. A bit of a programming note here. I think we're going to kind of roll through the newscast here to try to get Bonta on. We're still waiting to try to get a hold of Eddie Melton as well. So Michael and Jim, if you guys want to just hang out in the studio maybe for a few more minutes, we'll keep hanging out. Jose, you're on the clock. We're not letting you off the hook that easily either. You are listening to live election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org. And we'll be back here after this break.
Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000-plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today.
Lakeshore Public Media's brand new radio antenna has been installed, and we could use your help to learn how the signal is performing in your neck of the woods. Please take a moment and visit lakeshorepublicradio.org/feedback to let us know.
Two of America's largest grocery store chains are attempting a $25 billion merger, but some are worried about being supermarket swept under the rug. The deal could mean fewer stores and less grocery access for those in greatest need. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
Tune in daily at noon for The Takeaway here on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM.
He turned us on to so many great bands.
Angel City, April Wine, Scorps, AC/DC, Point Blank, Kansas, Rush.
Now he's bringing them back, scratchy vital and all.
Welcome to Don's Basement.
Hi, it's Don Clark. Join me each week down here in the basement as we uncork some vintage rock that has not seen the light of day in a long, long time.
Don's Basement tapes, Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. on 89.1 WLPR, Lakeshore Public Radio, and lakeshorepublicradio.org.
Americans are moving out of the city. You can be a doctor in a rural community. You can be a book publisher. You can be an electrical engineer. While not every town will have that diversity of employment, when you start putting together 5 to 7 counties, you got the same diversity in a rural region that you find in the metropolitan area.
What's next for small towns and suburbs? That's on the next On Point.
Tune in for On Point, live, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. here on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM. You're listening to Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, WLPR FM Lowell, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org. Good evening, I'm Tom Maloney, joined in studio by Michael Puente and Jim Harper. This is primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media. We are awaiting return phone calls from Austin Bonta, the presumptive Republican nominee for mayor of Portage, as well as Eddie Melton, who looks like he is going to be the presumptive Democratic nominee for mayor of Gary, defeating Mayor Jerome Prince this evening. We'll await those results after the news. It's 9:01.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. The man suspected of killing 5 of his neighbors in Cleveland, Texas last Friday over complaints of him firing a gun in his front yard has reportedly been arrested. The FBI announcing tonight that after a nationwide hunt, which had expanded into Mexico, a man suspected of being 38-year-old Francisco Oropeza was taken into custody tonight in a small Texas town not far from the shootings. Oropeza is a Mexican national who had been deported from the U.S. 4 times since 2009. An $80,000 reward had been offered for information leading to his arrest. A Utah judge has blocked a state law effectively banning abortion clinics. From member station KUER in Salt Lake City, Caroline Ballard reports the law was set to take effect tomorrow.
Utah's new law would have stopped clinics that provide abortions from renewing their licenses. That means there would be no such functioning clinics in the state by early 2024. The law also would have restricted where abortions can be performed, limiting them to hospitals. District Judge Andrew Stone granted the injunction request from Planned Parenthood Association of Utah. That organization argues the ban will essentially end access to abortion in the state. For now, the procedure remains legal up to 18 weeks, while the legal challenge makes its way through the courts. For NPR News, I'm Caroline Ballard in Salt Lake City.
Movie and television writers on the picket line today after talks between the Writers Guild of America and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers broke down late last night. 11,500 writers represented by the Guild walked off the job just after midnight. The strike involves writers on both coasts. In New York, writer Enid Zatanelis was walking the picket line today.
We're seeking protections like the protection against AI, robots, writing our scripts and eliminating our jobs as writers, fair pay, the idea that we get residuals for our programming on streamers.
It's not clear how long the strike might last. The last writer's strike 15 years ago lasted for 100 days. Effects of the walkout are already being felt, with late-night television shows airing reruns until further notice. Law enforcement or writers of films are on strike and were manning the picket lines early this morning. Authorities near Houston now say they have caught a man suspected of killing 5 of his neighbors with an AR-style rifle. Montgomery County officials at this hour holding a news conference to discuss that. Stocks were down sharply today, with the Dow falling more than 500 points as investors worry about another anticipated rate hike from the Fed. The Dow fell 367 points. The Nasdaq down 132 points. You're listening to NPR. Starbucks sales are on the rise as the company's latest report beat Wall Street expectations. The coffee chain had raised prices and saw its business recover in China, as NPR's Lena Selyuk reports.
Starbucks says its sales jumped 11% in early 2023 compared to last year. China has been a big focus for the chain because it's a key market, and COVID restrictions there had meant a lot fewer cafe visits. But with restrictions now lifted, Starbucks says sales in China have started to grow, up 3%. Overall, the company has been noting that its customers seem undeterred by higher prices, continuing to order cereal syrups and other extras. And this follows similar reports from Pepsi, Chipotle, and the consumer giant Kimberly-Clark, all saying their shoppers have seemed largely unfazed by price increases despite concerns about inflation. Alina Selyuk, NPR News.
The Defense Department and the FAA say they are closely monitoring a balloon that was flying off the coast of Hawaii last week and say while there's no indication the balloon is connected to China or any other adversary, they're keeping an eye on it. After determining it did not pose a threat to aviation or national security, officials say the military took no action. The balloon has now passed out of Hawaiian airspace. The latest sighting comes about 3 months after the U.S. military shot down what it said was a suspected Chinese spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina. Crude oil futures prices took a major hit today amid concerns over the looming U.S. debt ceiling crisis and worries about the economy, with a two-day Fed meeting underway in Washington. Oil down $4 a barrel in New York today. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, thanking the people who make public radio great every day, and also those who listen.
And, of course, thank you for listening this evening during live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org as well as on Facebook. Michael Puente and Jim Harper joining me. Tom Maloney in studio. Producing this evening is Jose Rodriguez. Engineering this evening is Jose Rodriguez. Producing this evening is Dee Dotson. And on social media is Russell Broadhacker, manning the boards there, and folks looking for some information from Gary. And we are still awaiting a phone call back from Senator Eddie Melton, who looks like he's going to be the presumptive nominee for the city of Gary. But joining us now on the studio lines is Austin Bonta, the presumptive Republican nominee for mayor for the city of Portage. Austin, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show. Happy to talk to you again, Tom.
Yeah, just a few weeks ago, I guess it was technically last month, we spoke at the during the Portage primary debate. And Austin, how old are you?
I am 32.
32, and this would make you the youngest candidate if you were to defeat Sue Lynch, I think, in Portage's mayoral history.
I don't exactly know how it lines up with like birthdays and how they do it by days, but I'll be 33 come November, and when I'd be sworn in, should I win in November, and I believe I'll be tied for the youngest mayor in Portage history.
So earlier this evening, Hannah Trueblood, Democrat out of Valparaiso, won her primary, and she's now the first female candidate on the ballot in November for Valparaiso, also relatively young. What is age, or what kind of a role do you think age plays in running for mayor and being able to get those votes?
I don't necessarily know or think that age itself plays a role. I think that there's some degree of, I think the term some people say has to do with like a fresh approach, a fresh background, or a fresh set of experience. I need to learn a little bit more about Miss Trueblood. I've heard, of course, some great things about everybody running around the region, but I think it is to say, regarding any candidate, regardless of their party, I think what voters care most about is what is the experience that you bring and what is the style that you bring. And I think that to some degree, I think that they're looking for a new approach, certainly in places like Portage, possibly other cities as well.
So let's talk about what plans, I guess, you're looking at for the fall as you're running against the incumbent Sue Lynch, who was running unopposed for the Democratic primary. How are you getting the word out and trying to, I guess, rally people around your campaign, especially when it comes to running against an incumbent?
Yeah, so something that I think I said, and I don't exactly know if I can quote myself perfectly, from the debate, but I think I said something to the effect of my closing statement that not all issues are partisan. A lot of what goes into both running a city and also what goes into really setting up a successful future for your city or your town. There's not often necessarily so much a partisan take, but there does have to be that right, vision for it. And in the case of Portage, I ran this primary campaign based really on the idea that Portage's biggest issue right now is that our population growth is currently outpacing the city's ability to keep up resource-wise to provide for the population. It's not so bad yet, but I think that we're on a trajectory that we have time to fix. We've got time to close that gap, bring in a stronger business base to our community that'll create jobs that keep people here. It'll increase shopping and dining options in our city, including from local and from newly created, family, businesses, small businesses. And also will generate that tax revenue that'll be able to adequately fund our city's departments and infrastructure. And I don't consider that to be exactly a partisan campaign, but I do think that it's a very pro-Portage campaign. I think we demonstrated that we can win a primary with it, and I think that by winning the primary, I think we've demonstrated to other people who might be watching and waiting to see if we can do it. I think that this is going to get a lot of people excited that this message can carry through in November.
You last vote tally that we had, you were at nearly 63% of the vote for Republican Republican voters in this primary up against John Cannon, a man who frankly has been running for Portage mayor since he lost to Sue Lynch 4 years ago. What can you tell us about how folks in Portage thought going into, or what were their thoughts going into the ballot box during this election cycle?
I really think that for most Portage voters, I think that they were really assessing when it came to, I can only really speak to myself, I think what I needed to prove in this election was not just that I had a bunch of good ideas, but that I also had the know-how about the city and how it runs, and the past experience working with the city, working in my professional life, to be able to do the very serious and important job as mayor. And so for me, what was so key was highlighting both my professional experience as a small business founder, co-founder, and a manager, as well as somebody with past experience in education, and as someone who, in the case of me with the city, working on the planning side via Plan Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Development Review Committee, and then more recently working into the Fire Merit Board. And so it is to say that for me, I think that what was a big factor with voters is, of course, John Cannon is a man who knows how the city is run. He's been involved with it for 8 years as a councilman, and then sometime as the acting or as the mayor who, took over back in 2019. So for me, I knew that it was important for me, and mostly the way I proved it was by knocking on doors. I know that I did a lot on social media, but I also knocked on 2,400 doors in the course of this primary campaign. And of course, that's not the same as talking to that many people, but every opportunity to meet someone new and to give the in-person story of my work experience, my work ethic, and my leadership style, I really think that's what won people over, in the end.
Austin, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and again, congratulations in your primary race, the presumptive Republican nominee for the mayoral race for the city of Portage, Austin Banta. He'll be going up against Sue Lynch, the incumbent Democratic mayor for the city of Portage this fall. Austin, best of luck to you.
Thank you so much, Tom, and you have a fantastic night.
You as well. You are listening to live election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Radio, Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org. We're going to get the latest numbers from Michael Gallenberger coming up in just a moment. Jim Harper joining me in studio. Jim, can you stick around for a few more minutes? We'll get you some more pizza.
Plenty of pizza, Tom.
Plenty of pizza. Yeah, excellent. And thanks to Michael Puente, who had to step out and hit the road. The deadlines are the deadlines, and stories have to get filed. You are listening to live election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media. Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000 plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today.
As your Northwest Indiana public broadcasting station, Lakeshore Public Media's goal is to serve you with a radio broadcast that engages, excites, and inspires. Help your local station reach that goal better by sharing your thoughts. Whether you tune in occasionally or have made us a part of your daily routine, your opinions matter. Visit lakeshorepublicradio.org/feedback to help us build a stronger community station.
Americans are moving out of the city.
You can be a doctor in a rural community. You can be a book publisher. You can be an electrical engineer. While not every town will have that diversity of employment, when you start putting together 5 to 7 counties, you got the same diversity in a rural region that you find in the metropolitan area.
What's next for small towns and suburbs? That's on the next On Point.
Tune in for On Point, live, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. here on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM.
He turned us on to so many great bands.
Angel City, April Wine, Scorps, AC/DC, Point Blank, Kansas, Rush.
Now he's bringing them back, scratchy vital and all.
Welcome to Don's Basement.
Hi, it's Don Clark. Join me each week down here in the basement as we uncork some vintage rock that has not seen the light of day in a long, long time.
Don's Basement tapes, Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. on 89.1 WLPR, Lakeshore Public Radio, and lakeshorepublicradio.org.
It's 9:16. You're listening to live election coverage from Lakeshore Public Media. Updated numbers from Lake County Public Questions. Highland Schools, yes, 1,512. No, 1,578. Munster Schools, yes, 2,875. No, 1,094. Tri Creek Schools, yes, 1,197. No, 2,318. Turning to the East Chicago mayoral race, the Democratic ballot, Anthony Copeland, 2009. Adrian Santos, 1,636. East Chicago mayoral race, Republican ballot, Travis Adonis Francis, 34, Arthur Santos Sr., 73. Turning to the Gary mayoral race, Jerome Prince, 2,980, Eddie Melton, 4,349. That is the Democratic Party ticket. Hobart mayoral race, Democrats, Josh Huddleston, 1,798, Jerry Herzog, 392. Lake Station mayoral race, Democrats, Bill Carroll, 755, Neil Anderson, 325. Reviewing final numbers from Porter County, Valparaiso Mayor, Republican ballot, John Costas, 1,504, Art Elwood, 306. Portage mayoral race, Austin Banta, 1,125, John M. Cannon, 670. And Valparaiso mayoral race, Democratic Party ticket, Pamela Schrader, 447, Hannah Trueblood, 833. For Lakeshore News, I'm Michael Gallenberger.
Become your best you at Indiana University Northwest with more than 70 high-quality degree programs, real-world experience, 60 clubs and organizations, athletic teams, a convenient location, and much more. We're sure you'll find exactly what you're looking for here. Learn how affordable earning your degree or certificate can be at iun.edu and start your journey in joining the 29,000 plus IU Northwest alumni worldwide today. This is live primary election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, streaming online at lakeshorepublicmedia.org. Good evening. I'm Tom Maloney. Joining us now on the studio line is State Senator of District 3 and now presumptive Democratic nominee for Mayor of Gary, Eddie Melton. Eddie, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for joining us this evening, and congratulations on your victory over incumbent Mayor Jerome Prince. Eddie, what's the room like right now where you're at?
Well, we're among a lot of family and friends, and it's an exciting feeling. You know, we've been waiting patiently to make sure all the numbers are coming in, and just celebrate with folks and take it in. But we're all ready to get back to work.
And I should note, before this conversation goes on any longer, you are still waiting on a call from Mayor Jerome Prince. So if you have to jump off, callers, he's not mad at us. He's not mad at you. He's got to go ahead and take care of that. So what is that first term going to look like for you, Eddie? Granted, there is a Republican candidate in Andrew Delano, though I don't think we've seen a Republican candidate win in Gary for, at this point, decades and maybe centuries. What is that first couple of years going to look like for you, Senator Melton?
Yeah, well, the first year is sticking to what we've campaigned on and just making sure we keep that same momentum and making sure we address public safety. Then looking to make sure we address cleaning the city, ensuring that the blight and debris and just the constant narrative of Gary being a town to be dumped on is changed and turned around. And then, of course, addressing our infrastructure, bringing to the table the background and the relationships and understanding how state funding and state resources, as well as the federal relationships that I have, to bring those resources back to ensure we address our infrastructure is going to be critical. Make sure our streets are paved, our light fixtures, from street lights to stoplights, because right now everything is pretty much been old and decrepit, and we have to ensure that we increase the structure of our infrastructure right now.
And so as you begin that process in terms of sort of bringing that infrastructure up, bringing public safety back up to a level where it is, what is the long-term goal here in terms of revitalizing Gary? Are you the guy that's going to bring Gary back and bring the promise back to the Steel City?
Well, I think Gary needed a leader to help put on the right track, and I believe I do have the leadership skills to do that. But it's not going to be one person that's going to turn the city around. I believe that having the right leadership, you pull the right community members, galvanize the right coalition of folks to help turn the city around. But I think we started on the right track after this session. I'm sure a lot of folks are aware that I passed Senate Bill 434, which is going to provide us with the resources for a new train station to expound on a TOD, the South Shore double tracking, that Congressman Viskowski and now Congressmember Van has helped champion. And with that new station downtown Gary will be a catalyst for economic growth and development. And just growing that all the way up the spine that I call Broadway up through the city and letting that be a catalyst of growth and economic opportunity.
Ultimately, what drove people to the polls today to go ahead and vote for you over Mayor Prince?
I think folks are just ready for a change. Non-traditional, quote-unquote, politician. I believe I bring a fresh perspective, innovative approach. I'm open to collaboration and transparency. I think my entire career, from working in the nonprofit sector to being a legislator, has lent me the opportunity to really look at things through a very new lens. And I'm just ready to get to work. It's hard for me to kind of gather all the thoughts because of the excitement right now, but I can tell you that myself and my team, we've touched every corner of this city. We've listened to many stakeholders that brought different perspectives, and it's my hope that we turn the city around by investing in the people, investing in our education, investing in our workforce development, helping those that's transitioning out of prison into society, helping our seniors that's retired and living in places that aren't suitable for them, giving them the type of adequate housing, and so much more.
Senator Melton, congratulations on your victory this evening, as you are the presumptive Democratic nominee for the mayor of Gary. You'll go up against Andrew Delano, unopposed, on the Republican ticket this evening in the fall. And we wish you the best of luck, and we will no doubt be talking with you again in the near future.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, and best of luck.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
There it is, Jim. That's Senator Melton of District 3, soon to be former Senator Melton of District 3, and now an opening for another politician. There are a couple of names that probably jump off in my head that could probably take over his seat. if he is victorious.
I'm sure those conversations are already well on their way.
Yes,
Tom.
I think they probably are, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And of course, that's really the big story of the evening here is Eddie Melton knocking off Jerome Prince for the mayoral race in the Steel city of Gary, probably the race that all of us really had underlined and sort of circled. Still waiting, though, on really a final from East Chicago. The last numbers we got were that Anthony Copeland was beating Adrian Santos by about 400 votes there. So it looks like he will very likely retain his mayoralship, and despite all of sort of the dysfunction in East Chicago right now that's been ongoing, lawsuits against the FOP, all of the first responders basically backing Adrian Santos, who's the township trustee, and just sort of a lot going on there. But one of the biggest numbers of the evening, 8%. No, it's not my GPA. It is the voter turnout for Lake County for this off-year primary election. 8.29% of the voters turned out for this. Right now, again, Anthony Copeland with the lead in East Chicago. Eddie Melton looks like he's going to be victorious over Jerome Prince. Josh Huddleston beats Jerry Herzog in Hobart. Scrolling further down, Mayor Bill Carroll is victorious over Neil Anderson in Lake Station. John Costas and Hannah Trueblood are victorious in Valparaiso. Costas, the Republican, Trueblood, the Democrat. Bonta, the Republican, defeats John Cannon, who's been running for Portage mayor for the last 4+ years.
5 years,
Last 5 years, it feels like. Of course, out in LaPorte, Tom Dermody and Ron Zimmer running unopposed on each ticket. Incumbent Dermody is the Republican, and Ron Zimmer on the Democratic ticket there. Dwayne Perry in Michigan City unopposed for the Republicans. He is victorious this evening. And Angie Nelson Deitch defeats a handful of candidates on the Democratic ticket in Michigan City, including former Michigan City Mayor Ron Meir. So those are really all the big numbers that we've been looking at. Tri-Creek Schools looks like the school referenda will not pass. Munster Schools referenda looks like it will pass, and Highland probably still too close to call as we wrap up our coverage this evening. Jim, thoughts on this evening? And again, what stood out, what surprised you, and what should we be looking out for in the fall?
For me, as we've talked about, Tom, the Gary mayor result I think is the big race tonight. It's the second biggest municipality in Northwest Indiana, and we're going to have the second new mayor in as many terms. Eddie Melton is certainly an up-and-coming, leader in Democratic politics, but just more generally, in Northwest Indiana. So it was interesting to hear from him about the race a little bit, and he's got some challenges going forward as mayor. But I think that was the one that jumped out to me. In general, I think a lot of these elections tend to be municipality dependent. There's the particular issues, so I think it's hard to read too many tea leaves. I will say I think there's going to be some big elections, coming up this fall. There are a lot of cities, Michigan City, Portage, where you're going to see very competitive Republican Democratic, Republicans and Democrats facing in a state, like Indiana, where at the state level you kind of have one-sided control. Sometimes, the most competitive and sometimes the most important elections are at the municipal level. So we've got a lot to look forward to in the fall. Hopefully we do better than 8%.
Fingers crossed there, yes.
While we joke about it, that's a serious issue, and hopefully not only are the people running working to improve voter engagement, but our leaders in Indianapolis, from my perspective, could do a lot more to promote voter turnout in the state.
This has been live election night coverage here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM. I'm Tom Maloney. Thank you this evening to Michael Puente, who joined us in studio. To Jim Harper, thank you as well. Manning the boards and engineering is Jose Rodriguez. Producing this evening is Dee Dotson. And on the technical production end, Miguel Ortega, as well as Russell Broadhacker.
on the social media end of things. Thank you all for tuning in this evening, and congratulations to all of the victors tonight, and we wish you the best of luck in the fall. Jim, don't put those headphones down too quickly. We'll see you back here in November. Thanks so much for joining us here this evening. We will now join In Progress, the World Cafe, here on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM.